So are my slides visible, sir? Is my slide visible?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes,
It
sir,
is
we can
visible.
see. Yes,
Okay. So the slide is visible and am I audible too, right?
right, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much to the Department of Electrical Engineering, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh, for giving me an opportunity to speak in. Uh, my focus will be on the solar photovoltaic systems. Major focus will be, as already been pointed out, I have been working in the Department of Electrical Engineering, Pandit Deendayal Petroleum University, Gandhinagar since September 2018. Before that, I worked on peer-to-peer power sharing and trading on a Netherlands government-sponsored project of developing and implementing smart grids for rural India at TERI School of Advanced Studies. It was a consortium project, the EU-India consortium project. Before that, I worked on building energy systems in PhD in Roorkee. So I have been working not on the physics part of the solar photovoltaic, but as is the systems part. So the major focus for the next, just a second. Yeah. So the major focus will be on identifying the and learning the ways of harnessing solar PV systems and what are the requirements of solar PV systems installation in India. I have been told that most of the audience here are faculty members and students. So my focus will be on presenting to you the material which is not easily available on books, and you have to do a lot of internet scouting and a lot of reading. So I thought that okay, whatever books you go, you will get about power electronics, you will get about grid integration, each and every system components. We will look into it, but not the integrities of it. We'll look into more from the practical side of the solar PV installations with case studies in India. We will start with very briefly, we will look into the historical milestones and then touch upon the global scenario of PV. I'll present before you all the insights from the latest reports that were published in 2019 and 2020. And I will also, you are free to contact me, or I will provide the presentation and also the study material that I have gone through to. I will be more than happy to provide them to the coordinators and they can provide to the participants as they deemed fit. Then we will look into the solar PV technology, a very basic part that it comes from a silica gel, then it is etched. And after etching, we make certain substrates, we take into titanium dioxide, we take into account the glass plates for the absorbability, and we will see how the solar PV cell is being made. And then we will also look into the performance characteristics, which is majorly the IV and PV curves. We will just briefly touch upon it. So in order to get a brief idea, then majorly we will focus on the solar PV installation in India. What are the business models? What are the state initiatives? What are the central initiatives? How can be the scenario post-COVID situation, which we will look into it. And then very importantly, we will look into the smart grid scenario. We will define smart grid, not the definitions that a magazine or a Google web page presents to you. We will look into the standardized definitions, then the government of India definitions, and we'll look into what are the opportunities of research and implementation that most of you just a feed in idea of having a solar PV installation, having a solar PV system installation, incorporating it, and for the benefit of the society and also for the benefit of the environment. I just want to seed in a thought into all of you that why it is important looking into solar PV system is after this during COVID scenario and after what we are seeing right now in this unprecedented situation, most of us are working from homes. Many of us are working from homes, spending a large amount of time from homes. So I think, don't you think that it is high time that we not only look for smart grids and smart cities, or smart villages, but objectively also look into smart homes. Smart homes which have the criteria of working. That means we should have a good internet facility. Maybe we have large machines like as compared to residential scenario like printers and so on and so forth. So we will look into that and see that is it possible or not. So for a historical timeline, a solar PV system or solar using solar energy is nothing. It's not a new concept. We have been doing it since civilization. You know, in the 15th century, there was an Egyptian ruler Amenhotep who built a sounding statues that would emit a tone once air inside the statue was heated. Once the air inside the statue was heated by the radiated sun rays. So this was a very novel concept. Yeah, this was a very noble concept. And in the early 17th century, also the magnifying glasses were, accustomed to the concentrate sun's rays to create fire, which were used for a lot of reasons. And these light rays are accustomed to burn ants because they were creating a lot of problem for wheat, and which were the wheat fields were attacked by the ants, and hence this invention came in using the magnifying glasses. And even in the second century, around 212 BC, Archimedes, the Greek scientist, used reflective properties of bronze shields, reflective properties of bronze shields, which are nothing but a large number of angled hexagonal mirrors to focus sunlight and set fire to the wooden ships of enemies of Roman Empire. And in the 20th century AD, Chinese people used burning mirrors, which were nothing but bronze concave mirrors, to light torches for spiritual purposes and for cooking. In 1767 AD, there was, a Swiss scientist, Horace Tace, who built the world's first solar collector hot boxes, which you can see here. And the heat which was produced tapping the sun's energy was around 320 degree Fahrenheit. So at that point of time, it was a very good invention. Of course, later the concept was used by what we call it a Sir John to cook food, reaching a temperature in 240 degree Fahrenheit, right? So there are a lot of inventions which have happened in the history, and this is not new. Using solar systems or using solar energy. Sorry, developing systems using solar energy. If you take it architectural wise, you take it thermal wise, you take it as electricity wise or heat wise, solar energy has been used, right? The photovoltaic effect, if you talk about only the solar PV system, the solar PV photovoltaic system, the photovoltaic as an effect, as a phenomena, was discovered by Edmund Becquerel in 1839. During this study, he was doing the study of electrical effects occurring between two electrodes when they are dipped in electrolytes, right? That's the concept of batteries we know, chemical batteries we know. Now, at that time, the scientific community was fully engaged, very interestingly in exploring the new field of electricity, which was opened after Volta's discoveries. So Becquerel reported the production of photocurrent. There is a photonic current which is generated whenever the electrons are covered by copper or silver, halide salt, which were illuminated by light, solar light, right? And he also discovered the effect of wavelength on the production of the electric current. See, what is the effect of wavelength and how much electric current is being produced, and what are the relation between the wavelength and the electric current, which became very interesting and led to a large amount of, effects, after effects by it. Now, 40 years after Becquerel's discovery, during the course of establishing electrical communication networks around the world, there was a discovery of photoconductivity in selenium rods that was done by William Smith, and then an operating solar cell that was done by R. Days. And the first operating solar cell was based on, copper selenium film, which was created by Fritz in 1883. And then in 1896, C.G.O. Barr patented an idea which they placed mirrors on the railroad cars and creating solar towers. And it was not before in 1905 quantum nature of light was introduced by a paper Einstein wrote a paper on quantum nature of light in 1905, which documented the effect of solar PV. So this is something which was a basic historical scenario. I just wanted to give you a brief idea and focus on the technological aspects of it. So let us see where are we globally when we look into the solar PV scenario or the solar photovoltaic scenario. If we compare the evolution of solar as compared to wind and other renewables, this is the data that I have taken from the report which was generated by International Energy Agency in released in April 2020. I have the report. I will be very much happy to share the reports with you. If you will see here, the solar PV has really played a very vital role if they're gradually increasing from 2010 to 2019, so almost a decade, and will always play a role in the energy transition. And this trend, the increasing trend, the yellow factor which you are seeing of the solar installation is already visible when we're looking into the evolution of renewable energy technologies in the figure. In the last decade, PV technology has shown an ever increasing market growth thanks to the technology and the price development also. The solar PV price have become very cheap and very competitive in the market. And that is the reason why the installation or implementation growth have also increased a lot. Right. And the PV has, and also not only that, there have been a large amount of research being developed on, improving the efficiency, performance characteristics, performance enhancement of a solar PV cell and a solar PV system, respectively. So it is becoming a niche technology, mostly used for electricity production, either in, space, spatial or in remote spaces to a mainstream energy source. Now, if you will see the electricity production, we'll see the electricity production in 2019 for only 1 year. Solar PV stood for approximately, if you will see, approximately 50% of the total renewable electricity production from the new production assets. Now, the difference with the figure here is due to the difference capacity factors of renewable energy technologies. Here, if you talk about, when I say non-hydro here, that means non-large hydro. So whenever you look into biomass installations, for example, they can virtually produce all day and all year round. Whereas wind and solar installations output strongly dependent upon the available resources that can vary locally. That is, they are majorly dependent upon the weather. And globally currently, we have 583.5 gigawatt of operational PV installed capacity. I repeat, 583.5 gigawatt as recorded by the International Energy Agency in April 2020, before April 2020, because they released the report in April 2020, so before April 2020. So global grid connected solar PV capacity reached around 570 gigawatt, along with 3.4 gigawatt of off-grid solar PV. And the total installed capacity hit a remarkable 2,563.8 gigawatt, with hydropower remaining the dominant source for the renewables. Yes, hydropower has always been the dominant source. Now, what you are seeing in the figure, left side and the right side, that okay, there have been a large amount of increase in installed capacity of solar PV plants. It is not only the renewable aspect which has brought this. It is also the role played by the solar PV in the reduction of CO2 emissions from electricity, right? Based on total electricity generated by the cumulative PV capacity installed globally at the end of 2019, it was reported that around 720 million tons, I repeat, around 720 million tons of CO2 emissions, annual CO2 emissions were avoided, right? So this is a important aspect of installation of solar PV as well. Now, if you will see the market of the installations, you can see, yes, China has been the leader here because the overall global PV market crossed 100 gigawatt mark for the third year in a row from 2017, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. Despite the lower market level in China, the global market level increased because not only China was doing the greater installations, there were other markets
for more than
You know, am I muted? Or am I muted? Yeah, which accounted for more than 44% of increase, a significant increase of solar PV. Now, in 2019, if you will see, some more than 15 countries, around 18 countries passed the gigawatt mark, passed the gigawatt capacity mark. In y-axis, you have gigawatt capacity. In x-axis, you have the timeline. And 9 countries now have, in all over the world, have more than 10 gigawatt of total cumulative capacity. 5 countries have more than 40 gigawatt of cumulative capacity. And China alone has more than 200 gigawatt of installed capacity. Right? China is number one with 200 gigawatt installed capacity. Then is European Union, which comes around which is the blue color here, 200, which comes around 130 gigawatt capacity. USA is the third, which comes around 75 gigawatt capacity. Then we have Japan, which comes around 60 gigawatt capacity. Now, if I segment, these were solar PV installations. If I segment the solar PV installations of utility scale, which are megawatt solar power plants, and lesser megawatt of kilowatt capacity rooftop, which can be residential, which can be commercial, municipal, institutional, solar PV, if we segment the PV installations, we will see that the utility scale market has grown a lot, right? And this is because there has been a strong push for tendering schemes from a large amount of countries, especially developing countries like India. And the market has also started to diversify with floating solar PV panels adding to the utility scale, because the floating solar PV will not come as rooftop solar PV. It comes as a utility scale solar PV, right? And then with energy efficient buildings and building energy system, there is a concept called as building integrated photovoltaic, which we call as BIPV. Now, building integrated photovoltaic has also started to complement in the built environment. There have been other emerging segments such as agricultural PV, which is very hardly to notice, but even then there are the segment which is coming. Now, if I see from the technology point of view, there have been some notable evolutions from bifacial PV development as well. PV integrated in the vehicles is showing the potential for further diversification of PV components. Of course, the current market level remains very, very low for an electric vehicle which has a solar PV on the rooftop, but it is something which is growing here, right? Now, if I just give you a brief snapshot of what has happened all over the world, we will see that China is doing wonders, breaking the market, and the growth in India is happening very large. India is growing very largely, installing the solar PV. There are a large number of state initiatives. You can go through the State Electricity Regulatory Commission websites of each and every state. For Union Territory, you have to go through JERC, which is Joint Electricity Regulatory Commission, and for Central CERC, Central Electricity Regulatory Commissions, and you will get a large amount of information about solar PV. The benchmark costs are being reduced, the subsidy schemes are being there. There are a large amount of standardizations which are happening when it comes to rooftop solar PV, and India is growing there. But if we see up till now, China, USA, and Japan and European Union are doing very good when it comes to doing very well when it comes to solar PV market. So what we have established up till now is one is solar, using solar energy is nothing new concept. It is being done since tradition. Second thing is, if we work only on solar PV, not only in India it is necessary to study solar PV, but all over the world globally there has been a large number of installations which are happening for the solar PV technologies or a solar PV systems. And we also looked into the bifurcation, a utility scale solar PV systems, which are usually megawatt levels, and rooftop solar PV systems, which are usually lesser than megawatt levels. Now, if we look into the solar PV technology, solar PV technology is nothing but, of course, you must be knowing that it is generating DC by using the photovoltaic principles of semiconductor materials. The earth intercepts a lot of solar power. about 173,000 terawatts of power. That is about 10,000 times more power than the planet's population uses is coming. So is it possible that one day the world could completely be reliant on solar energy? You know, the energy obtained from the sun, which is solar energy, is being so famously being used, is free, has environmental friendly, will never run out, and is renewable. So it becomes a perfect solution to our high dependence on deplenishable and the pollution causing, fossil fuels. So if we examine how solar panels convert solar energy into electrical energy, solar panels, which you are seeing on the screen as an animation, are made up of small units called solar cells or PV cells. The most common cells are made of silicon, which is a semiconductor material, the second most abundant element on the earth. In a solar cell, crystalline silicon is sandwiched between the conductive layers, which is coming from a silica. And each silicon atom is connected to other atoms by 4 strong covalent bonds. And these bonds keep the electronics in place, so no current is flowing, right? But here's the key. The solar cell uses 2 different layers which are created by doping. 2 different layers which are created by doping. Doping, as the name suggests, converts the intrinsic semiconductor to an extrinsic semiconductor. What usually happens is, very quickly we will look into, is that the silicon PV cells usually are composed of 2 layers. One layer is of free electrons, which we call as N junction, small n junction, and another layer is of holes, which we call as P junction. The N junction is made by embedding atoms that have 5 valence electrons, for example, phosphorus atom, in the silicon crystal lattice. In that lattice, the silicon elements, the silicon atoms, have just 4 valence electrons. That means the 5th electron of the embedded atom cannot participate in the electron pair binding with the silicon atoms. Thus, this electron is very loosely bonded, and very little energy is required to separate this electron from the atom and thus create a free electron. The embedding of an atom of 5 electrons or 5 valence electrons is called as small n doping, and these atoms are called as donor atoms. The positive junction of a PV cell, on the other hand, is made by embedding atoms of 3 valence electrons. For example, let us take into consideration some boron electron, right? Some boron. Now that boron electron can only form, or a atom can only form full bonds with 3 neighboring silicon atoms and a broken bond with a 4th silicon atom, such that each boron atom introduces a deficiency of an electron in the silicon structure, and a consequently positively charged layer is created, and that positively charged layer is called as P junction. Now the embedding of the atom of 3 valence electrons is known as N doping and P doping, and is called as acceptor atoms, right? So we have N junction, we have PN junction, and we have P junction, right? Now from that we can create a silicon PV cell, and whenever we have solar irradiance consisting of electrons to make a flow of current between the positive and negative layers of the cell, not all the photons of incident solar radiation can mobilize the free electrons within the cell, but only photons with a specific energy level, that is the band gap energy, can free the electrons and allow a flow of current. This was the theory which was presented by Einstein in his paper of 1905, and that we are using and following it since then, right? That means they take photons and deliver electrons. So this is how usually the constructional solar PV is being done. We have glass or protective layers, which also protects and increases the absorbability. And then we have different layers, which is conductivity layer and titanium dioxide dye layer, and also an electron. We have catalysts, and these are the materials which we have each and every functional characteristic for creating a solar PV cell. And when we will see in the coming classes, in the coming minutes, where how cells are made into modules, arrays, and then a solar PV system. Now let us look into the performance characteristic of a particular cell. Usually, I think the diagram is not coming. What we do is we develop an equivalent circuit diagram for the phenomena that I have just spoken for the last couple of minutes. If you will see the equivalent circuit diagram, what we usually have is we have a current source in shunt with a diode, then in shunt with a resistance, then a series resistance in the upper path. That means if you will see the equivalent circuit of a solar PV cell, you will see that there is only one source, which is the current source, which is acting as a source. Other elements, a diode, a shunt resistor, and a series resistor are sinks. That means they are taking energy. They are absorbing energy. Now, then you have the current equation because it's usually a current generator, and then you do the analysis to make it a voltage to get the terminal voltage. So if you will see the current equation, the output current equation, it is dependent upon the photonic current that is being generated, the current going through the diode, and the current going through the shunt resistance path, because we apply simple KCL. And the current flowing through the shunt resistance path is dependent upon the terminal voltage which we get as an output from a solar PV terminals. If you will see how to judge the performance, I want you to focus on three major points here. The first major point is at this point on the axis K, which is called as the short circuit current ISC. And the second crucial point here is on the ordinate in the x-axis, which is the VOC called as the open circuit voltage. And the third point here is in between the characteristic of current and voltage, which is MPP, which is the maximum power point. Now, the first point, short circuit current, is the current at which the solar PV cell terminal voltages are shorted. Now, why is this important? This is important because if you will put this condition in the characteristic equation and do the assumption, which is a manufacturing assumption, that manufacturing realization that the shunt resistance is of a very large value as compared to the series resistance, then you will see that under the condition when the terminal voltage is short circuited, that means that the terminal voltage is zero, this short circuit current comes approximately equal to the photonic current of the solar PV cell, and hence the significance of the short circuit current. Now, if we look into the open circuit voltage, this physical significance of this open circuit voltage point is, if you put the condition of current equal to zero, that means that the output terminals of a solar PV are opened. That means there is no load connected, so there is no current through the system. And if you will put that condition in the characteristic equation, you will get that this voltage is longitudinally or logarithmically dependent upon the incident solar power or the incident solar insolation. That means the voltage is dependent on the output solar on the solar radiation, but the variation is happening logarithmically. Now, why this is important is because if you change the solar radiation, which usually happens throughout the day, you get different open circuit voltages. And that is the reason why in undergraduate studies also, we do exercises on what will happen to the current voltage characteristics when we are improving or increasing the solar insolation or solar power, kilowatt per meter square. Right? Now, if you will keep on doing it, you will see that the VOC is increased logarithmically, ISC is increased linearly. That is the reason why for an increase, you will have another curve like this and going here. Right? That is the reason why VOC increase is small and ISC increase is large. So these are the two physical significant characteristics. If we look into the third point, which is the maximum power point, It is an important characteristic here because ideally, what we have discussed so far is that the current and voltage both are, fluctuating as the solar radiation or solar insolation, which is the input to a solar PV cell, is changing. So ideally, I would like my system to behave at a point which is closer to this point, which is the maximum power point. The corresponding voltage at this point is VMP, which is the maximum power voltage. Now, why it is the physical significance here is, first is ideally I would want my system to operate at MPP, my PV cell to operate at MPP. And at MPP, I will calculate what is the efficiency of my solar PV cell. Remember, if you will see the manufacturing data sheet of any solar PV panel or a solar PV module, you will always see that there are two efficiencies given. One is the cell efficiency and one is the module efficiency. The cell efficiency is output divided by input. Output is electrical in nature, input is solar in nature. So output is VMP into IMP, that is the maximum power, divided by input solar power in kilowatt per meter square into the area. Because the solar insolation is kilowatt per meter square and output is in kilowatt or in watts, right? So always kilowatt per meter square, we have to multiply with area to get kilowatt, right? That means area plays a very vital role when it comes to the efficiency factor. So for a particular cell, the area is completely covered, the wafer, the blue color or a black color wafer, which we usually see. But when it comes to module, you will see that there is the module has spaces between the solar cells, particular solar cells. It has spaces between the particular solar cells, right? That is the reason why the area is increased, the utilization is decreased, so the efficiency reduces for a module. Hence, the efficiency of a solar PV cell will always, it will come around 16.2%, 15.8%, depending upon the manufacturer. And the module efficiency is 13.9%, 14.1%, so on and so forth, right? It is given in the data manufacturer sheet, which you can see. Now let us look into the classification of a solar PV system. We will see classification of two categories. One will be in terms of connection, and the second will be in terms of the power level, right? So in terms of connection, a solar PV system can be classified as a standalone system and a grid connected system. Usually, the solar photovoltaic systems are generally classified according to their functional and operational requirements, component configurations, and how the equipment is connected to the load or the other power sources and storage system. Now, if you will see on the screen, these are the two principal classification. One is grid connected or utility interactive. Grid connected is also called as utility interactive or on-grid systems. Standalone systems are usually called as isolated systems or off-grid systems as well. Now, photovoltaic systems can be designed to provide DC power and also AC power service thanks to power electronic interfacing, and they can operate interconnected with or independent of the utility grid, and can be connected with other energy storage sources and energy sources as well, hybrid systems, which we will see integrated renewable energy systems, hybrid systems as well. If you look for the grid connected or utility interactive solar PV systems, they can be directly connected, they are connected by a household, and they can be a grid connected systems, normally a grid connected systems. A directly connected system is a system which is usually done for a large solar parks. Rooftop solar PV systems usually come under the household connection. If we look into the standalone systems don't usually connect to the grid. So standalone systems can be systems without storage. We will see each and every example with a case study. can be with storage, and can be a hybrid system. It's not the hybrid of solar and wind, it's the hybrid of with storage and without storage. I again repeat, the hybrid that has been mentioned here is a hybridization of a without storage and with storage system. Usually those are called as solar home based systems, which we will see. So let us look into the case studies or few examples of standalone solar PV systems without storage for DC systems and for AC systems. For a DC systems, it is something which is very famously used for rural applications, is a DC system without storage where you have a solar PV which is connected directly to the load. And one such example is the Luminous 3.5 watt solar LED lamp. Right? This is something which is available in Amazon as well. And it is very beautifully used. What I have seen during my postdoc case studies is because we had a pilot Banke Bazaar where we were trying to develop peer-to-peer energy sharing and trading for off-grid systems or such an isolated systems. So what usually happened was there is a person who buys so many solar lamps and then rents away these solar PV lamps, right, at a certain price. Now the persons who take the solar PV lamps use them, then bring it back, right, and then the solar PV lamps are with the person who has already who has created a market for it, maybe a distributor or someone, and then he keeps it for charging since morning for 4 hours and 3 hours, and then again rents it out, right? Though this system has not been very famous, famous because it does not have battery. So you cannot usually use them when you have clouds or during a season where you don't have so much of solar PV or so much of solar radiation. Such systems cannot be used. And costing is also an effect. So right now, these systems are very slowly becoming obsolete. Without storage systems are slowly becoming obsolete. Now, when you look for AC systems, there are some solar fans which has been majorly very famously being reported in China. And that's why if you will see that this is also a particular example that I have taken from AliExpress, Alibaba, AliExpress.com, which majorly don't use what we call it as a storage or a battery, but they run only during the availability of solar radiation. And this is one of the case study where you have an inverter. It's a converter here. It's a small converter which you are seeing here. It's a small converter. The solar PV is above the rooftop. Usually in rural applications, it is not always rooftop. If they have huts, and because the spaces between the huts is so much, they have a solar PV module which you are seeing here, and they keep it on the ground only because they don't have skyscrapers, so there is no shading problem. And they can get usually in arid regions where there are not so many trees as well. So they get good solar profile, and then they use the systems which you are seeing in the screen as well. Now let us look into a standalone solar PV systems with storage. Standalone solar PV systems with storage are very famously used for rural applications. If again, we will look into both DC systems and a hybrid DC AC systems. In DC systems, solar lanterns, it is very famously used, right? Solar lanterns are very famously used. Again, the same concept happened in the Banke Bazaar district where we did a scenario where they had a solar lantern. They would keep it for solar PV charging throughout the day, and then they will rent it out during the nights, so that it can be used in the lighting in the night season, in the night times, for reading, for cooking, or for other domestic purposes. So this becomes one of the standalone solar PV systems with storage. And if we look as hybrid AC/DC systems, hybrid AC/DC systems are majorly being used to develop solar home systems. Tata and Mahindra are working on sustainable habitat, where Tata has already worked on Nano, a cheap car. Now Tata is working on developing cheap homes, cheap small 1 BHK or sorry 1 room homes, which they will call at depending upon solar homes. Now those solar homes usually are they are developing as net zero energy, nearly zero energy. That means how much they will produce, they will utilize it. So they want to develop like mobile vans, caravans, and that will be regarded as solar homes. For that, they are developing hybrid AC/DC systems with storage, right? That means they have a solar PV array. Then they have, of course, for every battery, they will have a charge controller. They will have DC loads and they have AC loads as well. DC loads has an advantage here that we can mobile them. Just like power banks, we have power banks. We can keep it in our purse or in pockets and keep move it from one place to another. So that is the reason, one of the advantages we have with small storage systems. Now, if we look into some examples as well, some over-the-top examples, there are some innovative hotels or concept buildings. The example that I have given you for solar PV, solar homes that are being created by Tata and Mahindra are concept buildings. Both AC and DC loads are being used, and they can also become one of the concept of plug and play whenever it comes to a microgrid situation. What usually happens with a microgrid is, if we have created a microgrid, it becomes an asset in which cannot be changed. And that has been a problem whenever a distribution utility electrifies a remote village or a remote place where you already have installed a microgrid. What if we have small modular, buildings or modular concepts of solar home-based systems, and then we can develop a grid-tied inverter or a centralized inverter, which is one of the major research area which a large amount of power electronics people are working on, and then they can use that and connect all the small modular buildings or small modular solar home-based systems through the grid-tied inverter, and then connect to the point of common coupling and make it a microgrid, and then connect it to the grid or a utility grid. So it becomes a very interesting concept here, and also becomes a plug and play situation. So whenever you want, you can get isolated from the system and work independently. And if we look into the standalone solar PV systems, we have hybrid energy systems. Hybrid energy systems are systems which have renewable energy and also non-renewable energy generators as well. So such systems are not fully decarbonized. I repeat, such systems are not fully decarbonized. Integrated renewable energy systems, on the other hand, are the systems which have the sources which are completely renewable in nature. So such systems, integrated renewable energy systems, are fully decarbonized systems. Again, I repeat, they are fully decarbonized systems. Again, both the systems can have DC loads and can have AC loads as well. Now let us look into a grid connected solar PV system. Let us now look into the grid connected systems. Whatever we have looked up till now are standalone or rooftop solar PV systems. Now let us look into the grid connected solar PV systems. Now we will look into two types. One is a grid connected solar PV system without storage, and one is grid connected solar PV system with storage. These two configurations are designed for integration with today's distribution system. This is I have taken from an IEEE white paper which was released in 2019. Right now, if you see, we have of course, you will include the communication aspect as well to enable the utility to have an interaction with an anti-islanding control mode and to provide value information such as real-time pricing to the person who is involved. No other provisions are being made here for direct control of power flow by the utility. And the system control function shown in the figures represent the heart of the main solar PV power system. Now the functions shown here are the inverter, the energy management, the adaptive logic, and if you have storage, then you also have a charge controller. Now which all could be incorporated in a single device and can also be a separate device also. It is developing, it depends upon how the developer is developing the system. Now, if you will see the system here, where you have a PV array and you have the communication facilities where you do the weather forecasting facilities as well. It optimizes the value and manages the power flow to and from the grid. Power flowing to and from the grid. How does it do it? It does from a power control unit, which also controls the loads, right? The smart metering mechanism provides the real-time pricing or simply represent a set rate structure, which can be a time of use tariff, demand charges, real-time pricing, and which will be programmed into the grid integration system, the grid connected system. Knowledge of the utility rates is important here, right? Because this will enable the system, the energy management system and the power control system to control the loads and the associated power flow to and from the grid to provide increased profit or value to the consumer. Smart loads here are controlled by an information signal which is being provided by the energy management system. A power control unit here can isolate the loads which are desirable to control but do not incorporate information links, right? That means you have a certain amount of demand response available or incorporated here. How do we do it? We have an adaptive logic controller. We have an adaptive logic controller. Now this adaptive logic system is not necessary always. I repeat, this adaptive logic system is not necessary always. It increases the cost. To be very honest, it increases the cost, but it provides better control. An optional adaptive logic controller here, which you are seeing, enables this complete system to forecast, enables this complete system to monitor the load, monitor the utility rates, and with the help of the internet, it helps in forecasting the weather condition and also forecast to provide the optimum control of energy flow to maximize the value of the customer, the profit making of the customer. When the profit making is, the customer should be either paying back to the grid or should not be paying at all according to the consumer. Though this is not a good business model from the utilities aspect, but if you take about the consumer, and that is the reason why utilities are not coming very freely with grid connected rooftop solar PV systems, is that either if you see from the consumer's perspective, consumer is someone which is behind the meter. Meter ke left side pe pura consumer, meter ke right side pe pura grid, right? The meter's left side is completely consumer, meter right side is completely grid, and we have a communication channel making it the communication with the grid and also with what is happening inside the system, right? Now, if I add storage, what will happen? If I had power storage to the similar system, what will have my system will happen is my system will have the potential to further increase the value of the system. If you will see here, we have as compared to the system without storage, where we had only the inverter. Here we have an inverter and a charge controller, where we have a simple system, similar system with an energy storage. The charge controller will supply energy to the energy storage unit, and inverter will convert the output of the energy storage to AC power because we are looking into the AC loads. However, this is just one of the many possible configurations. Yes, another thing. Whatever I am showing you is not universally acceptable. This is something which has been widely being implemented, right? Now, DC chargers, AC chargers, and dedicated inverters for storage are all available in the market, with the advent of electric vehicles, we all know this. And all of these chargers could be operated in coordination with the PV inverter here. While PV can charge storage via DC charger, an AC charger may be preferred, since at least some of the charging will be done when the utility supplied electricity is very low in cost, especially during late nights, right? A desirable feature for a system with storage is to enable the system to operate independently whenever there is a grid outage. That means there should be a switch which is disconnected, right? Usually, to maximize the period of independent operation, essential and non-essential loads are separated at the load center, and these are done by the energy management system. And only the loads which are priority or the essential loads are supported for the energy with the storage. right? For example, lighting systems, non-lighting systems, refrigeration systems, air conditioning systems are luxurious loads. Now the thing is, I will give you the definition of smart grid. At that point of time, we will see how we can bifurcate loads which are prioritized loads and loads which are non-prioritized loads, and which we will see in that scenario as well. Now let us look into the solar PV systems bifurcation in terms of the power capacity. Again, this is something which is being followed by the government of India or mostly developing countries. This is again not a universal definition because it depends upon the country to country. Usually less than 10 kilowatt, we provide it as to be a local grid system or a local microgrid or a pico grid system or a rural solar PV system. For grid connected or building integrated photovoltaic systems, we have systems which are less than 1 megawatt but greater than 10 kilowatts. And for a power plants, which we have solar PV power plants are usually of megawatt levels. Now there is another interesting concept where Delft University of Technology, Delft is working on, that is called as XIPV. Now this is X can be anything. X can be urban integrated, building integrated, electricity integrated, information point, environmental integrated, so on and so forth. What is being done here is very interestingly, what they are doing is the electrical sustainable energy department or group and the photovoltaic material and devices, they both have clubbed and developed this group, and they are working on this XIPV systems. The notion of XIPV system includes not only the classical low environmental impact building added PV systems, but as I told you, also BIPV, EIPV, UIPV, so on and so forth. In addition, they are also working on how we can integrate this and make it as an electric vehicle integrated system, solar PV system, which they will call as capital V, VIPV system. It's written here, vehicle integrated system. Right, and if they are working on the development of the systems. They are working on the performance characteristics. They are working on the optimal cost scheduling. When should the solar PV be scheduled? If there is a solar PV system is not being scheduled, but still it is being generated, should they charge the battery or should they give to other loads? And they are working on this, and this is each and everything. They have a very beautiful website where you can get each and every information out of it. Now, what are the components which are being involved in a particular solar PV system? If we will see the very first, of course, you have a solar PV cell. Combination of solar PV cell in series and parallel increases the current carrying capacity or the voltage carrying capacity, hence the power handling capacity, and which becomes a solar module. The combination of solar module again being created, connected together with series and parallel creates a large solar arrays, and those large solar arrays can create a big solar PV system. So the very first component of a solar PV system, of course, is a solar photovoltaic array, and they are flexible in nature. Of course, it is important to keep in mind that the photovoltaic systems must be installed on stable roof mounting structures, right? That can support the array and withstand weather conditions like wind, rain, and corrosion for the next few decades. If you will go through SECI's website, SECI, Solar Energy Corporation information, you will see that a large amount of information is being given that what vendors should do or the developers should do for installation or implementation of a solar PV. They have the standards and the guidelines, each and everything is available there. Second most important is the charge controller. The charge controller regulates the DC from solar panels to make sure that the batteries are not overcharging. A charge controller can measure whether the batteries are fully charged and stop the current from flowing. It will trip the switch in order to prevent the batteries from the permanent damage. Now, charge controllers, if we look into the charge controllers very deeply, we will see that the charge controllers can be usually are of two types. One is the pulse width modulated charge controller and the MPPT charge controller. The pulse width modulated charge controller is a standard time and is suitable for small photovoltaic systems and small battery banks, and they range from 4 to 60 amperes. The MPPT charge controllers are more suitable for photovoltaics with a high voltage, in most cases go up till 150 to 160 volts DC. Now, now we have seen a large amount of examples. Now, every photovoltaic system will not have solar battery. So it is not necessary to include a charge controller into our systems. In other words, we need charge controller only if we have a battery bank. This brings us to the next component, which is the battery bank or battery. A battery bank makes sure that none of the unused energy from the solar PV is going to waste, as it stores the energy that is being produced by the PV array and is not being consumed directly or immediately. It can then, for example, supply our home or our loads when electricity during the night or during very cloudy weather conditions, or when there is not or sufficient sunlight is not available. Including a battery bank in our solar PV system again is optional. That's also example we have seen. But it can double the amount of solar energy that we can use, right? With a battery system, our home will be able to use about 70 to 80% of the generated energy, whereas without a battery, this would only be 30 to 40%, right? Now this, we have a battery charge controller. Now, when supplying loads, we have another power electronic interfacing component, which is very crucial, is called as the inverter. A solar power inverter is a key part of any solar PV system, as it converts electricity that is being generated from DC to AC. And it is necessary since we need AC power to drive our loads and drive our home appliances. Then usually we have a utility meter. Regardless of our solar PV system, our household will always have a power meter that will measure electricity consumption per house or per apartment or per building. The utility meter is connected to the PV system and will measure how much electricity which we are using in the home, how much electricity we have generated from the solar PV system, at what times we are doing it, if we are storing it, and if we want to feed it back to the grid or not. Another main important component of a grid connected solar PV system is the grid itself, right? Very few homes right now are living off the grid. Although renewable technologies make living off grid possible using solar battery technologies, most residential homeowners still opt for a combination of a solar and grid based electricity because grid will always be cheap. The electricity from the grid will always be the cheap. So if our home is connected to an electric grid, the extra power that is being generated once our battery bank is full will be sent back to the grid, which we call it as a net metering concept, which we will see. This also means that during the periods when the PV system does not cover for our energy needs, we will be able to supply home with the power from the electricity grid whenever necessary, right? Now, this brings to our very important concept that we know about all the topologies of connecting a solar PV to the grid or to the loads. And we have looked into the solar PV components as well. So it becomes imperative or very important that to look into how to size and design these components of a solar PV systems, right? First, what we usually do is we determine the power consumption demand. That means we do the load or demand assessment. Then we size the PV modules. Then we size our inverters. Then we size the battery banks. And then we look into the charge controller aspect. In order to do the demand assessment, what we do is we find out the total power and energy consumption of all the connected loads that need to be supplied by the solar PV system. We first calculate the total watt hours per day for each appliance. What we do is we just simply add the watt hours needed for all the appliances together to get the total watt hours per day, which must be delivered to the appliances, right? Again, I repeat, it not necessarily means that all appliances will be switched on. We just calculate it to get the connected load demand, right? Second thing is we multiply the total appliances watt hour per day into some factor, usually 1.2, 1.3, because we take into consideration that because there are cables involved and there are connections and human errors, there will always be some sort of energy that will be lost from the power generation point up till the load point, right? So what we do is we multiply the total appliances watt hours per day, and with 1.3, 1.2 or 1.4 factor, usually 1.3, to get the total watt hours per day needed from the PV modules, right? Now we size the PV modules. Different size of PV modules will introduce different amount of power. To find out the sizing of PV module, the total peak watt produced is required. The total peak watt is nothing but the MPP. The peak watt produced depends upon the size of the PV module, the climatic condition of the location, and we have to consider the panel generation factor as well, which is nothing but PGF. The panel generation factor signifies the maximum watt peak needed to meet the requirement of electricity from solar panels, right? For example, for a country like Thailand, the panel generation factor is 3.43. For India, the panel generation factor is 3.5, so on and so forth. So it's an empirical relation which varies from location and climate, and will always be given. If you go to the NASA's website, you will get the panel generation factor. And they have a large database for each and every latitude and longitude, right? Now, if after getting the panel generation factor for that particular location where you are installing a solar PV system, where you want to install the solar PV system, you calculate the total watt peak rating needed for the PV module. How do you do it? You divide the total watt hours per day which you have developed needed from the solar PV module. You divide it by the panel generation factor. Whenever you divide the total watt hours per day needed from the solar PV panel divided by the panel generation factor, you get the total watt peak rating needed for the solar PV system to operate the appliance. Now, when you get the total watt peak rating, then you have to calculate how many number of solar PV panels you have to install in order to achieve the total watt peak rating. So you divide the answer obtained from this point, the total watt peak rating, by the rated output watt peak of a particular solar PV module which is available in the market. We increase any fractional part of the result. For example, if it comes to be 4.5, then we buy 5 modules. If it comes to be 5.3, then also we usually go for 6 modules, right? The result of the calculation can be the minimum number of PV panels. Yes, if more number of PV panels are being or PV modules are being installed, the system will perform better and the battery life will be improved. If fewer PV modules are used, the system may not work at all times of the day during cloudy periods or when the adequate sunlight is not available. That will degrade the battery. That degrades the battery, right? And of course, if it is within the warranty, that can happen. But if it is not within the warranty, that cannot happen. Whatever I am giving you right here is done by the vendor. But why I'm providing the information to you is because apart from doing research, we have also been very much actively involved in industrial consultancies, right? So this will be really helpful as well. Now let us look into the inverter sizing. An inverter is again available in the market, is used in the system wherever AC power output is used. The input rating of the inverter should never be lower than the total watt of the appliances. This is a rule, the benchmark rule. It should always have the same nominal voltage of your battery. Again, a benchmark rule. For standalone systems, the inverter must be large enough to handle the total amount of watts which we will be using at one particular time. Right? That means if I have connected all the loads, if I created the maximum demand, if for a standalone system, the inverter should have that capability. For grid, I can take it from the grid, right? But for standalone system, it should be there. The inverter size should be around 25 to 30% bigger than the total watt appliances because of this reason. In case of appliance being a motor or a compressor, which are heavy appliances, then the inverter size should be at minimum 3 times, that is capacity of those appliances, and must be added to the inverter capacity to handle the surge current rating during the starting, right? For grid tied inverters or grid connected systems, the input rating of the inverter can be as same as the PV rating of the system to allow safe and efficient operation. Now let us look into the battery size. The battery type is recommended for use in solar PV system, which we usually uses a deep cycle battery. Lead acid batteries were very famously used. Now lithium ion batteries are coming. Now lithium ion phosphate battery is being worked on. Now deep cycle battery, why we use deep cycle battery is because the deep cycle battery is specifically designed to be discharged to low energy level and rapidly charge or cycle charge and then discharge day after day for so many years. The battery should be large enough and should store sufficient energy to operate the appliances at night times, cloudy times, and at the times where the sunlight is not available. Now, how we can find out the size of the battery? The size of the battery, first we calculate the total watt hours per day used by the appliances. We divide the total watt hours per day with the efficiency factor, usually taken here as 0.85%. Then again we divide by 60% the depth of discharge. Then we divide the answer by the nominal battery voltage usually. And now we multiply whatever we have got it. We multiply it with the days of autonomy. Days of autonomy is nothing but the number of days that we need our solar photovoltaic system to operate when there is no power available produced by the PV panel. Again, I repeat, days of autonomy are the number of days that we need the system, our system, to operate under condition when the solar PV power is not available, right? We get the required ampere hour capacity of the deep cycle battery. Now let us look into the solar charge controller sizing. The solar charge controller rating usually is the total short circuit rating of a PV multiplied by 1.3. It is typically rated as ampere, amperage, and voltage capacities. The solar charge rating, which we have to select in such a way that we are matching with the voltage of the PV array and the batteries, and then identify which type of solar charge controller is right for our application. There are a large number of different types of solar charge controller ratings. We have to make sure that the solar charge controller which we are taking, the sizing of the controller will depend upon the total PV input current which is delivered to the controller, and will depend upon the PV panel configuration, if it is series configuration or a parallel configuration, so on and so forth. So as a standard practice, the sizing of the solar charge controller is to take the short circuit current of the PV array and multiply it by 1.3. Now we have sized it, we have looked into the technological aspects, we have looked into the components. Let us now look into the solar PV installation, the rooftop solar PV installation in India. If we see, the Indian solar PV market has seen a significant growth with the installed solar PV panels thanks to a large amount of policies coming. We have the headquarters of International Solar Alliance in India. So it is expected that even the distributed generation which we are talking about will be majorly about the solar dependent as well. What you are seeing in your figure are the different institutions, or I can call it as stakeholders, which are involved for a grid connected solar PV system. Yes, the very first stakeholder is a distribution utility or the transmission utility also. The distribution utility and transmission utility, if you will see, the major role of distribution or transmission utility is to provide and operate the grid power and the grid network. The major expectations from these stakeholders, the DISCOMs, distribution companies and transmission utilities, is the stability of the grid, the safety of the transmission system, the impact of revenue of the distribution utility due to generation at the consumer end also, right? This is an expectation from them. Now we have some policy and governance institutions. The major ministry which is dedicatedly working is MNRE, which is Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. There is one another ministry which is not available here, which is Ministry of Power also, MOP. They are also working besides it. Then we have NVVN. NVVN is nothing but NTPC Vidyut Vikas Nigam, NTPC Vidyut Vyapar Nigam Limited. And then we have SECI, which is Solar Energy Corporation of India Limited. And then we have the state nodal agencies for solar implementations. Again, now all these agencies, they have to develop schemes and implement those schemes. So the major role of all these agencies, policy and governance agencies, is development and implementation. They have also foresee that there is a timely execution of the project. They have to also foresee that the subsidies which are available for rooftop solar PV systems are being disbursed timely or not, and if there is some power purchase agreement which has to be developed with the developer, with the rooftop solar PV owner, with the building manager, or with the utility or not. Then we have our regulators. Regulators are generally CERCs and SERCs. CERC is Central Electricity Regulatory Commission. SERC, every state has a State Electricity Regulatory Commission. What they do is the very first role, a very important role, is that they regulate the power tariff. They promote the renewable energy as per the Electricity Act 2003, and they provide the support, regulatory support for the clean energy market. So they are responsible for determining the power tariff. That's why their documents will always have a power tariff. They have to maintain the grid code standards. Indian Electricity Grid Code IEGC, Indian Electricity Grid Code January 2020 is there. The draft is available. It's open source. If you want, I will send it to you as well. And they have to do the regulation of distribution generation. Then we have a technical authority which will look into CEA. CEA is the Central Electricity Authority, and this technical authority has to look into the standards as well, the power quality as well, and the power reliability as well, which is happening or not, which will be foreseen by the Central Electricity Authority. Of course, you have funding agencies, you have banks which finance certain schemes if you have large amount of rooftop solar PV systems or large amount of solar PV systems. And of course, there are the stakeholders, which are we, which are us, which are the consumers, which can be industrial consumers, commercial consumers, institutional consumers, or residential consumers, right? We have to install, we have to take care of the power quality as well. We have to take care that if penalty is being imposed, we are being doing that, paying that penalty or not. Then of course we have equipment and manufacturer and supplier, which will create the market, which will develop competition inside the market. So we will be able to get good quality product at lower cost, right? So moving further, let us look into the models for implementation of grid connected rooftop solar PV systems in India. In principle, there are usually two models. Can anybody tell me how much amount of time I have been left with? I think.
Sir, you have 15 minutes.
Okay,
I'm audible, sir?
Fine. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we will just briefly rush into. So there are two types of model. One is called as CAPEX model. CAPEX model is capital expenditure model. Second model is RESCO model, which is called as Renewable Energy Service Company model. CAPEX models are usually self-financing models where the capital expenditure is provided by the owner itself who is providing the rooftop solar PV. Usually is being done by a commercial building because there are a set of guidelines for a commercial building. A commercial building solar PV capacity cannot be greater than a commercial building grid connected solar PV capacity cannot be greater than 50% of their connected loads, right? So they have to provide the capital expenditure themselves, and this is a one-time investment and is being mostly used. That means I will pay the complete system cost to the system installation company in one shot, and this will be my own system. I will own the system. I will operate the system. I will get the benefit for the next 25 years in India. If I'm planning to install a solar for my home or a small business, my installation size is less than 100 kilowatt, then I can install it by a CAPEX model and it is a good model, right? RESCO model, on the other hand, is a renewable energy service company model where they will finance, install, operate, and maintain the rooftop solar PV system, and they will sign an agreement with the owner, the rooftop owner. The rooftop owner will consume the electricity generated, for which I have to, if I am the consumer, I have to pay some money, pre-decided tariff to the RESCO that is being done by the power purchase agreement on a monthly basis for the tenure of the agreement. Based on the consumption, how I am going to pay or what is the requirement, this model, RESCO model, is further divided as rooftop leasing and also the power purchasing agreement. In rooftop leasing, we work on the gross metering mechanism. Under this arrangement, the RESCO developer, the renewable energy service company developer, will lease out the rooftop and will pay a fixed lease or a rental to the land or building owner over the time of the lease period, 25 years, 30 years, 90 years, 99 years. This is something वो आप लोग देखते होंगे in towns and cities, we have telecom towers over the rooftops, similar model, right? And they give, they take out, pay a fixed lease or a rental to the building owner where they have installed the telecom towers. Same thing is being done if they have installed the solar PV panels. The RESCO developer will export the solar energy to the utility at a predetermined feed-in tariff, FIT, which is approved by the regulators, right? So this is called as rooftop leasing model. There is another model, which is the power purchase agreement model, which is also called as OPEX model. We may not want to build our own solar PV plant, but rather buy electricity which is green in nature from the solar PV system. So we don't have to, in this OPEX model with solar power purchase agreement, I don't have to pay the upfront cost or the construction maintenance cost, and I don't need to worry about it. Someone else will be happy to build a solar PV plant on my roof and sell me that power through a power purchase agreement throughout the contract period or the agreement period. This model typically works for industrial and commercial purposes, not for residential purposes that much. And Indian companies have started offering it to the residential customers, but for large towers, where they have societies, some 1,000 flats and so on. What is a power purchase agreement? It's a formal agreement between an electricity consumer and the electricity generator, which is the investor, that specifies the terms and conditions of what will happen, what will be the transactions that will happen, and for how many years the transactions will happen. And if there is any conflict, who will be the arbitrage, who will be the third person who will come. Details will usually include, as I told you, the length of the PPA, which is usually 15 to 25 years, the tariff, and the annual escalations. This is called as the OPEX model or the power purchase agreement. Now, the major important point is which model is best for me or which model is best for consumer. For consumer that has adequate manpower expertise for operation and maintenance, rooftop access concerns, availability of funds, upfront capex model is the best. Consumer in states that have net metering regulations can make benefit of the same in case they have substantial access generation. On the other hand, the consumer who does not have the capital, availability, they don't have the capability, and they don't want to take the responsibility of operation and maintenance, then they want to pay only the monthly basis. जैसे हम लोग grid के लिए बिजली देते हैं, what we usually do, then the RESCO model is the best model. Now let us look into gross metering and net metering concept. In gross metering, the energy being generated by solar rooftop PV is being fed to the grid. In lieu to the energy being fed to the grid, they are paid a feed-in tariff. This is gross metering, not net metering. If I have the rooftop solar PV system and I am connected to the grid, if I am giving it to the grid, for every unit given to the grid, I am paid a feed-in tariff. In this mechanism, if you can see from the left figure, the rooftop solar PV system is owned by a roof owner, right? The entire electricity generated by the rooftop solar PV system is supplied to the grid, and in return, the system owner will get compensated at a predetermined tariff, right? Under this mechanism, this is a self-owned system. If I have a third-party owned model, then the rooftop solar PV system is owned by the system integrator or another third party. And the solar PV systems usually are installed on rooftops such as government, public, commercial, industrial, or institutional buildings. In this model, which you are seeing on the right, the system owner will, they have a long-term lease agreement with the roof owner and invest in the equipment, sets up the project, and sells the generator electricity to the grid. Gujarat, especially Gandhinagar, was the first to do this. The Gandhinagar rooftop solar program, we have a rooftop solar program. Gandhinagar rooftop solar program is an example of this model. If we look into net metering, in this model, as you can see in the figure, the rooftop solar PV system is owned by the rooftop owner. The generator electricity is supplied to the roof owner's end-use loads, and the surplus power is fed to the grid. The utility can purchase the surplus power or provide the banking facility for a particular period of time. So the utility will not, will never give the money back to the system owner as compared to the gross metering system. So that is the major difference between gross metering and net metering system. In this model, the third party owns the system, and the generated electricity is supplied to the roof owners and use loads, and the surplus power is fed to the grid. The utility can purchase the surplus power or provide banking facility. Other possible option, which you can see from your right side, is that the developers third party lease out the solar PV system, which are interested to the roof owners. The rooftop owners in turn will pay the developer and will pay a monthly lease rate. That's it, right? And also may get some tax benefits or so on and so forth, depending upon which state you are applying the system. These are certain sectors where we can install at different financial mechanisms, which can be self-owned, self-finance, bank-owned. There are EMI schemes also available for grid-connected rooftop solar PV systems in India. Right? The central government pays, according to MNRE, pays about 30% of the benchmark cost. In June 2020, new benchmark costs have come for special category states and different power levels, and for normal category states as well. What are the prerequisites which are important to install a grid connected rooftop solar PV system in India? The very first thing is adequate approvals from the government. If any company comes to you, industry comes to you, ki sir, as a faculty, give us an industrial consultancy, be a consultant, or if you are writing some pilot projects for large 1 crore, 1.5 crore EU, India, US, India, or whatever DST projects, we have to take all of these into consideration. An entity will always be installing an on-grid or a grid-connected rooftop solar PV system, and they will always enjoy certain benefits, incentives and subsidies from the government. As such, it needs to have, that entity needs to have proper government approvals and documentation and papers of the property to avail the same. A 20% subsidy is available on the on-grid system for residential only. Yes, and you can have capital subsidy of up till 20,000 or 25,000 per kilowatt or 20 per watt, which we can see from the SERC's, State Electricity Regulatory Commission's website. Then we should have adequate rooftop space other than residential rooftops, commercial complex, housing societies, community centers, government organizations, commercial malls, multiplexes, private institutions like us. We have rooftop solar PVs, institutional buildings like AMU can be utilized for such installations, right? Then there is area required. We should have certain amount of area which is non-shadowable in nature. Rooftop area is there, of course. Apart from that rooftop area, we have to take into consideration where are the concentrations where there is a less chances or very low chances of getting a shadow. Then the maintenance and on-grid system involves less maintenance and generally has a longer life. So what are the maintenance requirement and how we are able to grade it? Now, if we look into the smart grid scenario, I'll just roughly rough into it. We already know that this is a conventional mechanism of flow of power from one way, that is from a centralized generating plant through transmission systems to our distribution systems through our loads and at different voltage levels, and the voltage levels are changed at substation levels. If we look into the smart grids, different definitions are being available, are currently found describing the concept of smart grid. Many research institutions, agencies and institutions, organizations have come up with their own definition. For example, European Technology Information Platform underlines the concept of intelligent integration, sustainability and low cost of the electricity supply in their smart grid definition. US Department of the International Energy Agency, the International Energy Agency will focus on the use of ICT tools and doing all the things that were laid down by ATIP and in the definition of smart grid. The International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, stresses the concept of interactivity and flexibility of the smart grid along with optimum system operation and efficient and economic supply. Whereas the European Commission, in their definition as smart grid, say that the smart grids are energy networks that can fully automatically monitor the energy flows and adjust to the changes in supply and demand accordingly. Clubbing all these definitions, the government of India developed its own definition through the National Smart Grid Mission as an electrical power grid that has the capability of automation, communication, information technology systems, which will monitor power flows from the generation point to the point of consumption, not up till the distribution transformer or not up till our meter, but till the point of consumption. That will, the meter will have the capability of knowing how much my refrigerator is consuming, how much my lighting is being consumed, or how much my other appliances are being consumed. Non-intrusive load monitor, right? Up till the appliance level, and control, so the monitor the power flow from the generation up till the appliance level and control this power flow or curtail the load to match the generation and demand in real time, right? And if you want to know about the smart grids, I would request and urge all of you not to blindly just Google it. Go through the websites, and International Smart Grids Action Network is a website where you can get each and every smart grid scenario. And they also give you information of which renewable energy generation is being very much active in the development of smart grids network. You will see that rooftop solar PVs are very much there over there, and a large amount of reports and press releases are available. If you see the electricity sector in India, we have a grid of single nation, one grid of 370 gigawatt, and these are the sectors which we can see. Renewable energy scenario or the status in India, if you will see, we are highest amount of wind, and if you see, the growth in wind is less as compared to the growth in solar for the last 5 years when we talk about the grid interactive power capacities level. We are doing this because we have to achieve the 2022 target of reaching the 175 gigawatt installed capacity. So long way to go for solar PV. That's why the solar is the growth of solar is being large and very high as compared to that of wind. We have International Solar Alliance, which I have already been told to you. India has a very good solar profile, especially the western states and the southern western states. They have a very good solar profile. Southern western states have a very good hybrid or integrated renewable energy system potential because they have very good wind profiles as well. For solar PV systems, you have to develop certain standards. The standards are very much important whenever you write some projects or whenever you go for industrial consultancies. These are the things that you have to take into considerations. For each, if you are buying a solar PV panels or if you are buying a solar PV system components, you have the test labs which are recognized by the Bureau of Indian Standards, which you can take into considerations, and you have to follow all these standards, all these test labs. MNRE has constituted a standard testing and quality control committee. That's a consortium body which meets each and every quarterly or every year, and they work on developing these standards. They take the international standards as well. Now, if you look into the grid interactive building energy systems or a buildings to grid integration and how rooftop solar PV can come into the system, is controlling the load level, the thermostat level, for example, set point levels of the loads by the distribution utility. Can this happen? What is the architecture involved in it? What are the systems that can be involved in it is being shown in your figure. That means if I have, always remember, if I am a consumer, I have a grid connection. If I am switching on a switch, electricity aani chahiye boss. Nobody can stop me by using electricity. Yes, you can penalize me by using electricity if I'm not using it efficiently, or you can pose a higher tariff or higher price if I'm using electricity at peak demand. But you cannot stop me by using electricity. That's a binding contract I have with the distribution utility. So whenever I am switching on a switch or doing something, the utility can change the set point level. They can, for example, right now a large amount of LED lamps or LED lights are coming which are dimmable. So they can change the set point level of my luminous lux level. ACs, if I have put it in 22 or 20 and still I'm using some, bedsheet or a kambal, if there is a peak demand time is coming up, the utility can change the set point level, cannot switch off the AC, but can change the set point level, right? So these are the systems that can happen. So for a rooftop solar PV systems and the grid integration, and from a buildings to grid integration, because whenever you talk about renewable energy, you have to talk about loads. Without talking about loads, talking about generation does not make any sense. That's what we have studied in our 7th semester power systems operation and control subject also, Wood and Woolenberg. Also, one can work on peer-to-peer energy sharing aspect or peer-to-peer energy trading concept, where there is a rooftop. I have already given you the steps. You have to not only look onto the rooftop area, but also the area, how much shadow is being coming. So if there is an area, a rooftop, which is very rich, the building owners are very rich, but they don't have an adequate, non-shadow mechanism. But they want to participate in the green energy. So what they usually do is, we have a building which is in the or we have a residential building which is in the neighborhood of a building which has a very good solar PV profile. Then two things can happen. either this building can sponsor or share the financing mechanism of installing the solar PV like this. And whatever solar PV is being generated, it will be shared to this residential building. Each and every building here, which you are seeing on your screen, is a peer. Now, in order to not to increase the cost of the smart meter which is being installed here, because you have to do a lot of operating optimization algorithms, safety infrastructure, safety algorithms. So we have another peer, which is the centralized P2P station, where the pricing strategy will be developed depending upon the demand supply instant, or the demand supply, what we call it as situation at every instant of time on this microgrid scenario. This can work as off-grid when you disconnect it from at the point of common coupling, and can work as on-grid as well. So what will every household have? A presumer. A presumer is a building which produces and consumes their own electricity, will have a panel, all the loads, battery, meter, breaker. The consumer here may or may not have a battery as well. Now you will laugh at me, you will say, sir, there is no solar PV panel, then why do we have a battery in a consumer? Because the consumer in peer-to-peer power sharing and trading aspect wants to develop a business strategy, and they will buy the electricity from the grid, save it in the battery in the times when the grid electricity is very, very cheap. And then they will want to sell the electricity whenever they find it competitive enough to sell the electricity from discharging the battery back to the grid. All these calculations will be done by the centralized P2P station. So what lies in the future is how we can improve the development of this model. What will be the consumer's willingness index? That's what I'm right now working on. What are the forecasting study of resource, of demand, and also of the consumer behavior. Scalability. What will happen if there are 100 other households which gets connected to the peer-to-peer? What will happen if the 100 households come out of peer-to-peer? Who will? Yes.
Sir, sorry to interrupt you, sir. We are running short of time. We need to conduct question session from our participants.
Sure. So I will finish it within 2 minutes. I have just come to
fine.
the structure. I just wanted to give the brief idea of what else can be done out of it. I have also developed certain organizations which you will be helpful with. The audience will be helpful with, which are being associated with solar. I will also give this to all of you, and also the opportunities. This is what I'm really working on for building energy systems, that each and everything is there inside the building, each and every generator fully decarbonized. What are my power system studies? So what I want to develop is to develop a mathematical tool to evaluate the engineering, social, and the economic aspects of presumer-based energy systems, and assess the energy and environmental impacts. This was a certain brief of our areas in the Department of Electrical Energy. I am involved in the smart energy systems, where we work closely with the Power Systems Operation and Control Wing, which is headed by Professor Pragnesh Bhatt, and Power Electronics and Drivers, which is led by Professor Amit Sant, which we are working here. Thank you so very much for the patient listening. I just wanted to have a few more minutes. Nevertheless, I am really thankful for all of you for your patient listening. I am open for the question and answer session, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your quite interactive session. I request the participant to please ask question if you have any. If you have any question, you can ask to Harish, sir.
Excuse me, sir, I have a question. It was a very presentation. Thank you for that. And I have a question regarding the islanded mode of operation, or when the standalone mode of operation. During the standalone mode, if maximum power is not required, means if you don't want to operate the PV system in MPPT mode, so in that case, what is the PV power limitation? I just want to know that.
Output of a solar PV system, one thing is it is imperative that you operate it MPPT mode. I will tell you why. That is because if you are working on an islanded mode or a system mode, there will always be chances that there will be a grid connection in the future. So always it's imperative to provide solutions or develop solutions which are grid ready solutions. First point. Second point, even if you don't want to operate at MPPT, you always want to operate your solar PV system at a particular point where it is not fluctuating in nature, even when the solar radiation is different throughout the day. So you will always develop certain control algorithm, which is binding that operating point in that IV curve at a particular single point. So why not MPPT?
Yeah, that is true, sir. But means if I don't want to operate the system at MPPT, let's suppose my load demand is very less in the standalone mode of operation, and I don't want to, because if we operate at MPPT, there may be some losses in the system. So always it is not preferable to operate the system at MPPT.
Sir,